cash for the it's cash for the guys. Okay. I think it's some Andy Kaufman songs there. Alright, so I wanted to show you guys some really interesting stuff that I dug up, and I guess it's really been hiding in plain sight all this time. But sometimes, you know, researchers get blinded by this tunnel vision that isn't necessarily based on whether or not something's true, it's just whether or not it interests you. And so if you go over to, you know, Tom Voigt's website, for example, and you read the interview of Don Cheney, and you approach it with, what are the suspicious things that Don Cheney is saying in this interview? You might miss some other really weird stuff that's in there that makes you wonder. Because my newest campaign is essentially an attempt to vindicate and do actual, you know, justice to Don Cheney's legacy, we're going to be talking Don Cheney a little bit here. I'm kind of on the warpath in this community right now, with the intention of eventually getting these ideas transmitted onto Black Box Online Radio, where people can, where people can see these concepts on a larger scale. Because obviously everyone knows Black Box Online Radio has a much bigger audience than I do. So I'm hoping that Ned and I can coordinate a show on this. I always love doing shows with Ned. He's a great fellow for me to have, like, in a stream, because we have a really good natural chemistry, I think, and he challenges me to really be sure of what I'm saying, or have confidence in what I'm saying. And I'm at the position where I've heard about Don Cheney for so long now, and, you know, spent so much time talking about Don Cheney at this point, that I'm ready to answer any questions that come about from why I don't think Don Cheney is a Zodiac at all. So the first thing I really want to, we're going to dive into some stuff. I want to show you what I'm working on right now. It's a document called the Don Cheney Solution. Okay, let's put it on the screen here. Just to give you a little preview of things. And I would like to publish both this PDF and then a read-through of this PDF prior to really announcing things to Black Box Online Radio. But if at any time Ned finds any of these concepts interesting enough, I'm perfectly happy and very much excited for any opportunity that I have for Ned to talk about these things on his show. This is the Don Cheney Solution. Okay. And it says here, this document is dedicated to the memory of Donald Lee Cheney and his surviving family members who have had to endure a calculated, sustained, complicated, and profit-driven attack on his character for decades in the years following the Zodiac Killer murders. To date, there is absolutely no evidence in existence that Donald Cheney has ever committed any violent crimes, and he was not the Zodiac Killer. So obviously then some information about, and this is just in progress here, so. Oh, did I not put it on this? Am I stupid? What happened? Let's see what happened. No, I think it's on the screen, isn't it? Yeah, you guys see that. When I minimize it, it goes away. That's good to know. Didn't know that. Well, I can give you a reason why Zodiac might have stopped. Because the Presidio Heights debacle was an absolute shit show. And he was probably really scared and knew that he was going to get caught if he continued. And for Zodiac, the signature wasn't in the killing itself. It was in the attention gleaned from the killing. The killing was a means to an end for Zodiac. Anyway. This stream isn't... This is the thing that's really nice about my Don Cheney solution. Is it actually doesn't require really almost any conversation about Zodiac at all. In fact, it doesn't rely on anyone being Zodiac particularly. It doesn't even... At no time do you need to have a a declaration of who Zodiac was to understand how my theory on Don Cheney checks out in all ways. It checks out in every possible way. And that's why I'm prepared to go and do a PDF like this, the one that I'm working on, that is dedicated to Don Cheney and his surviving family members and puts it right out in bold. Don Cheney was not the Zodiac Killer. He wasn't the Zodiac Killer. Okay? He just wasn't. So, you know, for all the guys out there in this community who are trying to trash on Don Cheney because they don't understand what happened, which is really what it is, you're just wrong. He's just not Zodiac. He's actually a war hero, or not a war hero, but he's an American hero who was in the Air Force. He's a hard-working family man who's just a badass, and he was trying to help us, and he was trying to protect us from someone he thought was the Zodiac. It doesn't matter if Alan was or wasn't Zodiac. It doesn't matter at all. All that matters is that Don Cheney believed Alan was Zodiac for my theory to work. Okay? And Don Cheney would tell... Was he? Your guess is as good as mine. But we're going to show you some really interesting stuff today. Some of it's going to be on the topic of Don Cheney. Some of it's not going to be on the topic of Don Cheney. But it's all going to come from the Don Cheney interview. So now that that's out of the way, this is... Zap, you're going to love what we're going to show today because it's actually one of the most interesting little picks of the Zodiac land in recent times. So I'm just going to read the interview with you guys. Let's just do it. It's a huge interview, but we got some time to kill. So let's see. Window capture. All right. So this is an interview of Don Cheney by Tom Voigt, December 30th, 2000. And I'll leave it as... Should we put it as full, or is it good to have like me on the screen, people? I think that it's more visually appealing to have all this stuff going on the screen. But a little harder to read. Can you guys read that? I think you can. I think I'm the only person who can't read that. Let's see. Let's make this. Some of it, I might lose attention span as we go, and then kind of, let's move Beeson with the Sturmgewehr on top. I might lose attention span as we go, and if that happens, we'll just skip through some of the boring information, and we'll get to some of the highlights. So anytime I say T, that means this is Tom Voigt's dialogue, and anytime I say D, that's Don Cheney's dialogue, okay? T, okay, so it's December 30th, 2000, and it's 1 p.m. at the Hood River Inn, Hood River, Oregon. Go ahead and say your name, D, Don Cheney. T, Don Cheney. I'm Tom Voigt, and I guess we can start from, I guess we should probably talk about Arthur Lee Allen, don't you think? D, mine as well, but never heard anybody call him Arthur. T, yeah, that's, I've been trying to, every time there's a newspaper story about him or something, I always tell them, look, don't call him Arthur because nobody will recognize him as Arthur and you'll lose out on feedback from people. And they always say, okay, we won't call him Arthur. And then, of course, they always call him Arthur. So I wonder how many people with some good information have read stories about him and they didn't realize who it was. It's crazy. So, but he spelled his name, or he spelled it Lee sometimes, I guess, L-E-E. D, I'm not aware of that. T, when he worked at Ace Hardware, well, they probably they didn't want to customize the name tag. D, could be. T, I guess when he worked there, it said L-E-E-D. He could have been called Lee at a job. He was normally called Lee or Al. In informal situations, Big Al. T, when did you meet Lee? I met him when I was at Cal Poly in 1962. T, and what was he doing at that time? D, well, he was unemployed. So, look, some of this stuff, let's just get through, because you guys know about Lee Allen. That's what I mean. Like, there's all this stuff about Allen, and they're going to get into Zodiac in a second here. Which, of course, I like this little bit. Don Cheney says, well, I saw him catch some trout with a fly rod, and Tom Voigt says, did he have an electric gun sight attached to his fishing pole? And Don Cheney laughs about that. That's a good line. You know, I mean, Tom Voigt has like a mild sense of humor. It's nothing great, but it's probably a little bit innovative back in the year 2000 to say that, so. Keep going. Okay, so here's some interesting stuff. D, well, he had a couple of .22 pistols, a Ruger and a Harrington Richards, and he had some kind of a rifle when we went deer hunting together, but I don't remember what it was. And then Tom Voigt says, so just those? And then Don Cheney says, that's all I'm aware of. Well, here's what's interesting. We've all seen the photographs of Arthur Lee Allen's drawer full of pistols, and we know that he has more pistols than Don Cheney was aware of. So, And he says anyone could go to a hardware store. So you could just buy guns at Home Depot back then. It was really, really easy to do. Okay, keep on going. Again, this is why it doesn't matter. Like, when people say, well, yeah, but Arthur Lee Allen had no hair. It's like, you're missing the point of my theory. It doesn't actually matter if Arthur Lee Allen had hair. It matters whether or not Don Cheney believed he was Zodiac. That's the thing. And we all know that Don Cheney believed that because he tells us that all the time. That's what he went to his grave saying Arthur Lee Allen was Zodiac. Okay, so let's move on. So it doesn't matter if Alan's bald, doesn't matter what he looks like, doesn't matter what Zodiac looks like, any of that shit. All that matters is that Don Cheney thinks that Alan's Zodiac. And my theory all checks out from there. Okay? Let's keep on going forward. I want to show you guys the really interesting little nuggets that are in here. Do different voices so I know. Fuck. I mean, we don't really have to, because I'm not going to read. I was going to read the whole interview, and there's just so much stuff. Here's the link. If anyone else wants it and you want to read it, it's long. So I'm just going to put it on the screen so that you can see this for yourself, the whole interview. But I want to show you what parts of it were interesting that I was like, huh, check this out. So how do I make this smaller? I guess just shrink it. That's convenient. Dirtbags. Okay. So this is the link for the interview. It's going to be at the top of your screen. High above the spinning ball. And, well, it was going to be at the top, but there's actually no room up there. So here it is. So it's on my head now. ZodiacKiller.com/CheneyTranscript.txt. I'll just put it down here. And we're going to move the change petition. And we'll do that. I mean, it's a little bit blocked, but anyone can read that, right? Can you guys see what's going on there? Maybe if we shrink down the email even more. The email really doesn't need to take up as much room as it does, honestly. It's all that you actually need. So I know it's getting a little cluttered down there, but, you know, that's fine. Okay, let's move forward. So Tom Voigt says, so was it, I mean, if it couldn't have been anything just inherently bad about him as far as women, do you think it was just that he didn't want to make the necessary sacrifices to get a female, or just that there would have been nothing he could possibly do to have a girlfriend? Don Cheney says, I think they were just not attracted to him. Tom Voigt says, there was just something instinctual that they felt about stay away from this guy. And Don Cheney said, I think so, yeah. And Tom Voigt says, and that, how did he feel about that? Don Cheney says he didn't like it. If he had felt so, this is not the first time that we actually hear this mentioned about Alan. It wasn't even just women; it was like everybody. Arthur Lee Allen was not popular. People didn't really like the Seawaters were like his only friends, guys. Okay, all right, let's keep going. Everybody couldn't stand Arthur Lee Allen. They just felt creepy around him. Even the news crew. Oh, I mean, it would be amazing if Cheney was still here. Are you fucking kidding me? If I could have asked Cheney one question, what would it be? Jeez. I don't know. I wouldn't even want to bother him. You know? I would bring him on the show, and we would talk. But I wouldn't go out of my way to ask Cheney. I guess the only thing I need to know from Cheney, because my entire Cheney theory hinges on it, is do you really think Alan was Zodiac? And of course he would have said yes. I already know the answer to that question. But to get it from the horse's mouth would be, of course, the final, defining factor as to whether or not my theory checks out. And it totally checks out. Everyone knows it checks out. You can't deny it. Okay, let's keep moving. So I think this is Darlene Farron. Or no, it's not. This is his mom. Okay, well, let's just keep moving on before I just make shit up like Drew Beeson does. And let's see here. Keep going on here. hunting people. All this stuff's going on. All right, I don't know why people haven't picked up on this. I'm going to show you guys. This is going to be the big thing. This is where Tom Voigt shows himself to be a lunatic, when Don Cheney says, I was at that time, I think I was selling life insurance or trying to, but not successfully. And Tom Voigt says there was some people in Vallejo that could have used it. So Tom Voigt is insane. He was trying to be funny, and Don Cheney didn't buy it. You can actually see that he was trying to crack a joke about murder victims here, which is terrible. And Don Cheney says, suppose so, which I'm sure was an awkward exchange. And then Tom Voigt says, so you came over on New Year's Day. And he just immediately changes the subject and moves on. He even stutters his words here. He says, so, because he's insane and everyone can tell. And Tom Voigt sucks. Okay, let's keep going. Here we go. We have the ZODIAC wristwatch. It was a good Swiss movement. I like the way Don Cheney talks. He's cool. Don Cheney's fucking awesome, by the way. Not the Zodiac Killer. Just a fucking cool dude. Alright, so here... Okay, check this out. Ready for this? I want you guys to remember what Ralph Spinelli said in 1987. And going forward. I believe that we actually do know the motive of the Zodiac Killer. They were thrill killings, and it's been my sort of position. I've hypothesized, but I don't necessarily think I can prove, that the Zodiac Killer was attempting to become a paid hitman, and that by doing shootings in the newspaper, that he would then establish himself as a killer and a known killer. And then all he would need to do was go to someone he believed who was involved in crime and say, hey, I'm Zodiac, and then prove that. So we all know Zodiac liked to prove things. And that person would go, oh, you're right, you are a murderer, you shot all those people, okay, you can be a hitman. Okay? But without those proofs, he would never get hired. So look at this little snippet. Now remember, the year here is 2000. So we don't yet have the His Name Was Arthur Lee Allen documentary. We don't... The type of information coordination that's going on between Don Cheney and Ralph Spinelli is not at a level that we might expect it to have been today, because it just wasn't that way, and I don't even know how well Spinelli and Cheney knew each other. They might not have known each other for a long time. Not too sure. Not sure if anyone's ever established that connection. But anyway, Don Cheney says, yeah, I don't know what he was thinking about. I think we may have talked about careers. And he'd mentioned something along a Mike Hammer Thin Man, you know, a detective sort of thing. And Tom Voigt said, yeah, like that might be interesting to him. Don Cheney says, like, yeah, like he could do that and it'd be interesting. And I wasn't thrilled about that. I didn't know, or I didn't how you could. The difficulty is, you know, how do you get based? How do you get started in order to have clients? And I mentioned that to him. And Tom Voigt says, do you think that conversation was on New Year's Day or could it have been before? And Don Cheney says, no, that was on New Year's Day. Tom Voigt says, for sure, yes. Okay, pointing this out, guys, because, look, it doesn't matter too much when they have the conversation, because the idea has probably been cooking in Alan's head for a while. So if they had this conversation on New Year's Day, 1969, which would have been after the Lake Herman Road shooting, that doesn't mean that Lake Herman Road can't have been part of this motivation to become a killer for hire. Because Alan could have, hypothetically, been thinking of doing this for a long time. And I suspect he may have been. Tom Voigt says, for sure. Don says, yes. And he says, so he talked about what different careers he could do, and he mentioned being like a private detective, like on TV, and Don Cheney says, yeah. He says, have you ever expressed an interest in being a police officer before? Don Cheney says, no. And then Tom Voigt says, do you think this was a serious interest, or was he just, and Don Cheney says, I think he was making conversation. Or I thought he was making conversation. Tom Voigt says, okay. Don Cheney says, and especially said, well, if you couldn't get the clients to come to you, you could do the crimes, and then you wouldn't have to have them come to you. You see? See what's going on here? So Alan is, it seems, kicking around this idea with Don Cheney that he can go do some murders and then, you know, pitch himself to a criminal and say, hey, I just did these murders. This is me. Can you hire me as a hitman? And what exactly did Ralph Spinelli tell us? Ralph Spinelli told him he had that very same conversation with Arthur Lee Allen. People say, well, why would Allen go to Ralph Spinelli? Because Ralph Spinelli and Arthur Lee Allen already had a situation where Spinelli didn't rat him out to law enforcement when he had the opportunity to. because Spinelli's involved in organized crime and Allen knows it. So the whole thing checks out. But let's stick to Don Cheney. I just want to stick. I don't want to get bogged down in Arthur Lee Allen again. Hell's Angels, Lake Herman Road, marijuana. It's a dumb idea on Zodiac's part, but it's probably true. You ever see that claim someone who knew Ralph saw Arthur Lee Allen at the club? Yeah, I'm sure he did. The ties are just too intense. And you have all these witnesses coming forward who don't know each other. That's the thing, like murdering. Do you even know about the whole thing here? The whole backstory of Allen and Spinelli and everything? It's too insane. For Allen to not have some kind of involvement, it's just mind-blowing. So anyway, I don't want to get bogged down in Allen, because it doesn't matter if Allen's a Zodiac or not. All it matters in this theory is what Don Cheney believes, okay? So Don Cheney appears to, push out the drugs angle that I've talked about, but definitely was drinking. And then, of course, Don Cheney only says he never knew of any drugs. I think that Zodiac was on amphetamines. Did he get, what was his demeanor when he would drink? Pretty much the same. Did he get violent or angry? No. It's not, Alright, so look at this. These attacks on people, taking the lug nuts off a car. Guys, Don Cheney, why would he be lying about this? Zodiac was probably just a drinker. I don't know, man. Read the bus bomb letter. That's the most methed out shit I've ever seen in my life. You know, it's so methy. All right, let's see. Call himself Zodiac. Blah blah blah. All right, check this out now. It's coming up. Here it comes. Pen light on a rifle barrel. And the sketch is coming soon. Yeah, dude, this is so weird. I just want to keep screaming about how Allen was him. But it's like, this is how they get you. You see, people who want to do this whole Don Cheney theory, it's so easy to get sidetracked in this by Arthur Lee Allen that people don't keep your focus narrowed on Don Cheney. I'm telling you that, and I'm telling myself that even, because it's hard to do that. You know, of course, and then Drew Beeson says, oh, he's a pipe stress analyst, and pipe stress analysts talk about crack proof, so that's a retarded theory, so we're just going to keep going past that. All right, here we go. This is what I found really strange, okay? I believe that there is a composite sketch from Blue Rock Springs hidden in the Zodiac Killer holdback evidence. Okay? I don't know why we have never been shown this composite sketch, but I think that it exists. Strangely. I think hidden in the archives of the Zodiac Killer. And I know, of course, Tom Voigt thinks he's seen everything, but he hasn't, you know. Hidden in the archives somewhere up in Sacramento, probably. Under a pile of other confidential documents. I believe that there is a composite sketch from Blue Rock Springs. Because look at this. I don't know how Don Cheney saw it, but look at this. Tom Voigt says, which sketch did he see that? And Don Cheney says, it was the one that looked like Lee of the... And Tom Voigt says, there was one with glasses and without glasses. And Don Cheney says, no glasses. This was the, what was that, Blue Rock Road or whatever's the name, Blue Lake. And Tom Voigt says, well, there, oh, the lake? And Don Cheney says, this was the survivor from one of those first two Vallejo cases before Berryessa. And he's very specific about this. He said, this was a survivor from before Berryessa. Tom Voigt says, because there wasn't a sketch about that. The only two sketches that they came up with, one had glasses and the one didn't have glasses. And Don Cheney says, this one, I don't think it had glasses. It was a profile, and it was a picture of Lee. And Tom Voigt says, a profile? And Don Cheney says, Profile, yes. And Tom Voigt says a side view, and Don Cheney says side view. Okay, look at this, guys. He is not confusing. He's very sure of himself. This is not the same thing. Look at how many certain statements are made here. That it isn't from the lake. It's from Blue Rock Springs. It was from before Berryessa. It was from a survivor in the first 2 Vallejo cases. And it was a sketch that didn't have glasses, and it was definitely in profile. Weird. Did they find that sketch, or did they think they found that sketch? Because look how sure... Look, this is the thing. People say they find stuff, and they figured stuff out, and they just claim it to be, oh, there, we debunked that. It's like, maybe you did, or maybe you're actually just wrong. Because look how sure of himself Don Cheney is here. So I don't know where he saw this sketch. No, I don't think this is just some unrelated, that chainsaw murder thing. That's got nothing to do with it. And Don Cheney is sure that it was from the first 2 Vallejo cases. So no, people think they find stuff, but remember, there's also people who think that they solved the Z32. Yeah, and if it's on the forum, it doesn't hold any water to me. There's people who think they solved the Z13 on the forum, so I don't really care. Okay. There appears to be holdback evidence with a composite sketch of the Zodiac killer in profile. Remember, look at this. Wow, look at this. Look at this, guys. This is what these people found. Tom Voigt is so arrogant. He thinks he knows everything. He doesn't know everything. He says, so it was, and you know, how sure are you about whether it had glasses or not? And Don Cheney says, no, I'm pretty sure it did not, but it was a profile, and if there were glasses there, it didn't make much a difference. I don't think there were glasses. Tom Voigt says, I've never seen a profile sketch. Don Cheney says, I've seen 2. Tom Voigt says, of profiles? Don Cheney says there was one connected with some killings up around Sacramento or Grass Valley or somewhere up in that direction, and it was similar face to Lee's, but it had big jowls. Wonder if that's Euron's, possible. Hey, Murder Inc., do you know of any profile sketches of the East Area rapist from Sacramento or Grass Valley area that you believe to have been D'Angelo? Because look at these big jowls. D'Angelo has those big jowls. So I'm wondering if that might be something Don Cheney had seen. Tom Voigt says, no. So you're pretty sure it had no glasses on the sketch. And Don says, neither one of those. And look at this stuff, man. This is a crazy interview. And then notice that Drew Beeson holds this against him. Ready for this? How about Blue Rock Springs? Don Cheney says, I don't know. I'd never heard the name Blue Rock Springs. Okay. Drew Beeson, I want you to pay attention to the difference between I'd and I've. Okay? There's a difference. So if you replace the D with a VE, you get a whole other meaning. You understand? Maybe we can do a how to read tutorial. But I'd never heard the name Blue Rock Springs. And Tom Voigt says, okay, it might have just been because you mentioned you thought this. Maybe you meant Lake Berryessa then because you said Blue Rock Springs earlier. So Tom Voigt thinks he's tripped him up. At this time, you know, Tom Voigt is kind of suspecting Don Cheney, but he's ruled him out since, which is, of course, what I would say too. Don Cheney says, well, I was thinking it was, what's the other one? Lake Herman Road, and trouble getting them in my mind. But, and then, look at this. So they go, oh, well, Don Cheney's acting like now he doesn't know what Blue Rock Springs... No, he had never. Not he has never. At the time, he means. He had never heard of Blue Rock Springs. Later on, of course he's heard of it, because now he's being hounded by people about Zodiac every day. And then look at this, and people say they found the sketch. Well, Don Cheney says they'd had the word Zodiac in it. And then, of course, Tom Voigt thinks that he's seen everything here. This is a moment where Tom Voigt is just delusions of grandeur yet again. July 4th. Shot in their car on midnight on a rural road near Fresno. Interesting. Same day as Blue Rock Springs, so that's strange. Yeah, weird. Okay, let's keep going on. And I'm gonna get more coffee because that was the smallest mug in the entire world. Stand by. Let's keep going through this. So, look, I'm not even reading anything here that makes me suspect Don Cheney in the first place at all. Like, at all. There's just nothing suspicious about Don Cheney to me at all. Oh, well, he lied to the cops. Everyone lies to the cops. I've lied to the cops. Oh, I must be the Zodiac killer because I lied to the cops. That's retarded. That's dumb as all hell. And Tom Voight says, so you believe that Zodiac was definitely Arthur Lee Allen? And Don says, I'm morally assured that it was Lee. See? Ted Kaczynski. See? Somebody's house. Okay. It's just nothing suspicious about him at all. I think what he is he's just a guy who's been really wrapped up in... I think Zodiac bros maybe plan shootings in 2 locations at the same time. It's possible. Hey, you know, if you can ever find a connection between Joseph D'Angelo and Arthur Lee Allen, that's going to be earth-shattering, guys. If a connection can ever be established between D'Angelo and Arthur Lee Allen, it would be huge. That would be the highest gravity thing that's ever happened in Zodiac. But I don't think there is one. But they were both in the Navy. So you gotta see if you can find that. If you can find such a connection like that, it would change the whole thing. Look, Don Cheney didn't do any of this stuff, man. This is dumb. It's an interesting little interview, and I think that it contains information. And people in the forums are like, well, we've found this, so therefore. It's like, yeah, you think. I'm just going to say no. No, you didn't. No. No. Who is this side profile sketch that Don Cheney saw? Where did he see it? Maybe he didn't see it in a newspaper. Maybe he saw it. Dude, okay, here's a possibility for you. We know Don Cheney is a liar, okay? We know he lies. Because his story had changed and different, you know. And I don't think that's that bad. I mean, you know, it's okay, especially if your intentions are noble. If he's lying specifically for us to look at a suspect, it's possible that he saw a side profile sketch of someone from law enforcement and then had to lie about where he'd seen it because law enforcement told him, hey, this is holdback evidence. Don't ever tell people that we showed you this. And then all these idiots on the forums are like, well, therefore, he had to have seen it in the newspaper, and I found this newspaper article, and I know everything because I hang out with Tom Voigt. And it's like, neither of you know everything. So, maybe he was shown classified information that you're not allowed to see. And they're like, no, how dare you? I'm allowed to see everything. It's like, no, you're not. Dirtbag. So, what do you think of that hypothesis, Zap? Don Cheney is so cool. Diving. Wonder... Yeah, it's a possibility. I mean, you got to find that connection, of course. But yeah... I mean, they have a lot of overlapping interests. Where it wouldn't surprise me at all if they were friends. Simply wouldn't. I think Arthur Leon's the type of guy who would be friends with Joe D'Angelo. And we just had to find that connection. They had a lot of overlapping interests. They're both Navy. They're both divers. They're both fat guys who like to do violent shit and collect guns. So, you know. Arthur Lee Allen was crazy, guys. And so too was D'Angelo. Two crazy guys from the Navy who live in the same area at the same time, both fat, look the same. Yeah. Both probably like to blow people away. There's just never has been a better suspect than Allen, and there's so much stuff with separate people from separate... What year was he shown VR Sketch's profile? Yeah, we don't know. What year? VR Sketch doesn't really look like Allen, though. We're looking for something that looks like Allen. And it might not be publicly available, either. That's the other problem that we have here. Don Cheney could have been showed classified documents and then had to lie about where he had seen it. Because it was illegal for him to reveal that. Or he was scared into believing it was illegal in some way. And Tom Voigt thinks he knows everything. You didn't consider that angle, did you? They're like, well, that's ridiculous. It'd be like, that's just because you don't like that idea. So it's ridiculous to you. But it's possible. It's totally reasonable. Don Cheney could have been showed holdback evidence by Armstrong and Toschi. And then Armstrong and Toschi could have intimidated him and said, hey, if you ever talk about this sketch that we just showed you, we're going to get you in a lot of trouble. And so he might have been, you know... He might have just lied about where he'd seen it, and that's why no one can find the newspaper article about it, because there isn't one, because he never saw it in a newspaper like he claimed he did. We don't know. Everybody thinks that they have it all worked out, and they solved the Z13. They don't. But what we do have worked out is that Don Cheney wasn't the fucking Zodiac killer. That's obvious. It's very obvious. If I can... How fucked up would it be if I did a book burning? That would be crazy. Oh my god. I don't want to be that antagonistic, you know? It'd be funny, though. Book burnings carry, like, a really heavy connotation. Yeah. There's just so much crap in the Zodiac investigation that we're in a position where you just need. But I like to vindicate Don Cheney right here, not the Zodiac. Free Don Cheney, not the Zodiac. See it right here, Drew Beeson? It says right here. This is all the proof that you need right here. Not the Zodiac. Free Don Cheney. Okay, so he's not him. We know that. Oh well, how dare you? Why would he say the fingerprints? Probably because he was scared that Arthur Lee Allen planted his fucking fingerprints on something. Remember the time that Don Cheney claimed that Arthur Lee Allen... Did you see the 1965 Chico case that looks like Zodiac? No, not yet. Or maybe, but I'd have to hear the names of the murder victims, maybe. Remember the time that Don Cheney told us that Arthur Lee Allen had him put his thumbprint in a ball of paraffin wax? And everyone took that to mean that Don Cheney must be scared that they're going to find his fingerprints or his DNA on, like licking the stamps. They might find his stuff on the envelope, you know? What if that's because Don Cheney actually did that stuff and then he was like, oh, fuck. What if they find my shit on there? That's the other thing. People just like automatically assume that they know why Don Cheney's lying. And you don't. Because that theory requires his lies to be because he's a serial killer, which is retarded. That's not required at all. There could be so many other explanations. Don Cheney might have just been lying because he wanted to be famous. But the explanation that he lied because he was a serial killer is like such an absurd leap of logic, it's not even funny. But I really do think that Don Cheney believed that Alan was Zodiac. So to immediately just be like, oh, well, he's lying, therefore he's a serial killer. It's like, you're insane. Yeah, people watch too many fucking movies. Totally agree. They're watching a Criminal Minds. He goes, he's inserted himself into the investigation. No. That happens sometimes, but it's like really rare. Most of the time, these people are staying as far away from the fucking case as they can because they don't want to get caught. These people watch like 3 episodes of Criminal Minds. They're, he's inserted himself into the investigation. Don Cheney is a serial killer because he lied about something. Yeah, it happens, you know. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But it's like, yeah, it's pretty rare. Like Ed Kemper is a perfect example of that. Ed Kemper was like best friends with all the cops that were chasing him. What's his name? Unterweger. Jack Unterweger was interviewing the police officers. But these are rare fucking things, man. And so, like, Don Cheney, yeah, Don Cheney was... There's a million other reasons why Don Cheney might have been lying. Let me give you a couple reasons. Don Cheney could be a pathological liar who simply can't help himself and needs to lie to feel gratification. That's a possibility. I don't think that's the case. Another possibility is that Don Cheney believed that Arthur Lee Allen was a Zodiac killer and he lied to the police so that they would look at Arthur Lee Allen, which I like that angle because remember when they went to Arthur Lee Allen's house, they found bombs buried under it, so, you know. Then the third angle is that Don Cheney wanted to be famous. Then the fourth angle is that someone else put him up to it, which is probably unlikely. So there's all these other alternatives that don't require Don Cheney to be a serial killer. At all. And then, so he's a serial killer from Southern California who drives all the way to the Bay Area just to shoot someone, and then he drives all the way back down. That's really stupid. And I like the idea. Yeah, those are, of course, all viable ideas. They're way better ideas than him being a serial killer. That's way more rare. I've lied to the cops, too. Who hasn't lied to the cops? If you've ever committed crimes before, everyone, you know. Him being Zodiac is easily the most outlandish, for sure. Him being Zodiac is like what happened, because I saw that documentary. His name was Arthur Lee Allen. And when I watched it, I was like, man, this Don Cheney is really weird guy, man. And I thought he was suspicious. And then I thought about it for more than, 4 seconds. And didn't immediately publish a book about it, about this one idea. And so I didn't have to cling to it forever at the expense of my entire researcher's reputation. Like this guy over here. And there's other reasons. But it's this enthusiastic... The documentary definitely focuses and edits it for a better doc. Yeah, true. That's a really good point. That's a good point. Yeah, they only have a couple hours to tell a story. And what do we want to hear about Don Cheney is why does he believe Alan's a Zodiac? But all other possibilities are vastly more probable than Don Cheney is a serial killer. And then here's the other thing. So check this out. So according to Beesman's theory, right? Don Cheney he drives all the way from Southern California to Northern California to commit his murders once a weekend or whatever the fuck. And this shows that he's this very elite, smart serial killer who never connects himself to the area. Because Baywart's a fucking shitty detective. Baywart is garbage. Baywart doesn't know what he's talking about. That's the other problem with that. Baywart's put up there, and he's garbage. Guys, detectives can suck too. It's like all these other like people think that someone's like law enforcement, therefore they're like on it. They're not even human. They're like transhumans. They're fucking beyond people. They've transcended the abilities of human intellectual capacity, and they're like so elite that they know everything. It's not the real. That's not real. There are okay, perfect example. Look at the detectives who investigated the murder of Charlene and Lyman Smith. They're retarded. There you go. Yeah. I mean, there are some I think that are pretty clever or whatever. I'm not saying that. I'm not going to take it that far. They also. See? Look. Yeah, I know Baywart helped get some wrong guy convicted who was later clear. Why are we even listening to him then? He should be fired and disgraced. Fuck him. He ruined someone's life for many years. Baywart is absolute trash, and he looks like a cross between George Costanza and a retarded pig. Don't forget that. So, yeah. Oh, Baywart says he was suspicious. Of course he was suspicious of Don Cheney, because Don Cheney was lying to him. Don Cheney was lying to the cops. It's a matter of why was he lying to the cops. So, Don Cheney is this brilliant serial killer, right? Who drives all the way from Pomona, all the way to the North Bay Area, just to shoot and stab people and shit like that. But then he's so dumb that he fucking flunks a lie detector test and like tells obvious lies to the cop. Like, which is it? Is he smart or is he dumb? Doesn't make sense. Doesn't reconcile. And Baywart can go fuck himself for putting someone in prison. Fuck you, Baywart. If you got somebody wrongfully convicted, you deserve to be in prison. I didn't even know that, Zap. If I had known that, I would have had even worse words for him than I did in the beginning, because he needs to be in prison, actually. The punishment for getting someone convicted to prison who didn't do the crime should be at minimum possible sentencing guidelines that you should be sentenced to the same amount of time that they had to serve in prison. Plus massive restitution, both from the investigative agencies, the court system, and the personal officer who testified. Garbage. Just garbage person. Baywart should be completely discredited. I don't want to hear anything he says ever again. I didn't know that he did something like that. He's a terrorist. He's a terrorist, and he looks like a mentally retarded pig. And so he can go fuck himself. Someone must remember where Joe was on July 4th, 1969. Yeah, and you know the fucked up part is that even if they did know, they wouldn't ever tell us because they would probably have been threatened. You know? If your theory is true, that we're being lied to, and this is a cover-up, and that D'Angelo is Zodiac, then you can't expect that information would ever be told to us, and you have to probably find that person and interview them yourself on your website. Because law enforcement is not going to back that up. But anyway, Baywart is such garbage. A month after the event, maybe, but not decades later. Yeah, good point. It can be hard to remember. I mean, where was he doing on July 4th? But then again, July 4th is a major United States holiday. So there might be someone out there who goes, yeah, I was with Joe on the 4th of July that year. We know that he got off the ship in Vallejo in November of 1968, right? That he was in that area in November 68. Have you tracked D'Angelo's movements better? How thoroughly have you tracked D'Angelo's movements? I think I've seen a timeline from someone, but I want more. Just keep adding to that timeline. Never give up. Because we need to find out where he was on the dates of the offenses. And, of course, the problem is every day. Jeez. Well, then where was he on July 4th, 1969? Can you tell us that? That'd be cool. How do you track him every day? What'd you do? Who'd you talk to, Bonnie? You know she's alive. Isn't Bonnie Colwell still alive? Why don't you go interview her? Where was he on July 8th, 1992? What the fuck happened that day? What case is that, Zap? Zappy Zap. Or are you just trolling? Oh, man. Joking, but that is the goal. I spoke to someone better than Bonnie. Who's better than Bonnie? He was slept in the same bed as her at that time. It's just a random date, but I want to know. Fuck off, Zap. The original Bonnie. Oh, okay. Yeah, I've heard of. Yeah. But you need. I would like you to go talk to her. Who was here on the chat? Was Polly Walnuts that like? Oh, that was Sharon. He talked to, or he almost talked to, but then he got scared, and he wouldn't do it. She's around. Go interview her. You know, be like, just tell her. You'd be like, look, here's what it is. We need to know. Why does that message get retracted? Crazy thing about, I don't know. Anyway, there's just nothing in it for me that makes me think Don Cheney is Zodiac at all. And Ross, I think you can do better than that, Ross Tracy. You know, let's be careful about aligning ourselves with Drew Beeson so hard that we have to start making bullshit up about who Zodiac was. Let's try that. Let's not be like such good friends with Drew Beeson that we even have to entertain this retarded possibility that Don Cheney is a Zodiac killer. Because he's not. It's like dumb. You know. Well, Tom Voigt's ruled him out. Been ruled out. Oh, but he writes his lowercase d the same, and then in the same breath, they're like, he used synthetic handwriting. It's like, well, what the fuck was it? That's why I don't look at the handwriting that much anymore. You know? Because it's synthetic handwriting. I like linguistics. And I've put up there before with you guys, zodiacconfess.wordpress.com. Sharon's father was a peeping Tom in Vallejo, arrested 1940s. Wow. Yeah, that's another really weird fucking thing about Joseph D'Angelo is like him, all of his family, and all of his friends are like a bunch of creepy criminals. Which I think is really weird. You know, jeez. I think there has to be a cult then. Because it's too weird. You know, it's like Sharon's dad is like a fucking sex offender, and like Joe's the fucking obviously the EAR. Does run in families, that shit. Yeah, but then like how did he know? Like let's say when he meets Sharon, he starts like going out with her and then gets married to her. Is that like one of the prerequisites? Like, oh, let me make sure that you come from a line of sex offenders first? Like, why is that happening? We also have to account for, guys, internet pornography didn't exist at that time. So in the 1940s, if you wanted to go wank it, you kind of had to go peek through windows. Basically. That's why we saw so many. Yeah, that's common. Yeah. That's why we saw so many voyeurs and stuff in the 50s and 60s, because there was no internet porn. People had to go peep in windows. Go watch the new It show, and they have the little kids like staring at their neighbor with binoculars. It's like, oh, geez, you're the Visalia ransacker. But it's just like, that's, you know, it was different. But there is something creepy about that. And like, here's another creepy weird thing. D'Angelo shows up at Bonnie's house with a gun and tries to force her at gunpoint to go to Reno, Nevada to get married to him, right? And Bonnie's dad like talks him down, and then he's just like, that's it. Never pursues charges, never like does anything about it. He's just like, yeah, don't do that. Okay, bye, Joe. And then Joe just like goes off and hangs out and commits 55 rapes and shit or more. Weird. There's something weird about all these fucking people, and I don't know what it is. I don't understand yet what the fuck is wrong with these people. But there's something wrong with them, and we maybe can find that. Let me get a vape 1 second. 1 second. It's the same with that detective. He was shining the torch into the window of his daughter's... Yeah, but I'm not sure that that's a true story. We'll talk about that in a second. Not peeping is common, but abuse causes trauma reenactment in interpersonal relationships. Yeah. Here's the other thing. Okay, so the detective, are you talking about Chief Willick, or are you talking about Richard Shelby? Because Shelby's just said all kinds of crazy shit over the years. That's definitely the cause of abuse and kind of become... I think Shelby was suffering from EAR derangement syndrome. And what EAR derangement syndrome is when you research the Irons so much that you think everybody that you see is like a prowler. And back before he was identified, this problem was way worse. Because people would research Irons and then they thought everything that went bump in the night was also Irons. Because that's all they read about. Like Michelle McNamara, she thought everything was Irons. She's like, who sold me these drugs? I believe Shelby was right in Willick. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. But why not just kill them? I think that puts him at a lot of risk to stalk Richard Shelby. Why not kill him? Because, guys, we all know D'Angelo would fucking cream Shelby in a gunfight. If it came down to it, it says Shelby versus Irons in a gunfight. Shelby loses that battle 10 times out of 10. Irons is no fucking joke with a gun. He'll fuck you up. Willick, yeah, that's a more believable story than Shelby. Because remember, Shelby says that Irons was hanging upside down like Spider-Man into his kids. I mean, maybe, but probably not. That's like more of a sensational story. Willick, I believe him. I'm more inclined to believe him. Yeah. Willick was his chief at was that Roseville or Auburn? I don't know. No, up north. I need to go there. So, Auburn PD, I guess. Spider Joe, yeah. But come on, like Shelby, what? The night after Joe was fired, a biker was shot to death near Auburn. Then a 14-year-old kidnapped near Auburn house. Man, I don't know what the fuck is like Joey or not. Southern California. In Orange County. And I moved from town to town because I'm shady. Joe was going nuts. Yeah, it probably was. I bet he was going crazy. That's the thing, my address changes like every 30 seconds. It's changing as we speak. You guys think that this room... You think that this room is in a house? This room is on little motors and it moves around. So, there is no address. You know. And I'm not talking like an RV. It's on like little rocket motors. Like RCS system. It's a reaction control system. So. That's why the guitar fell over the other day. I didn't want to tell you guys it was RCS firing. That's where that smoke just came from too. Came from the RCS. Who knows what's true at that point? You know, everybody wants to think they have it all worked out. What I have worked out is that Don Cheney is not the fucking Zodiac killer. Can you FOIA John's arrest in LA County? Who's John? His brother? I don't have any money, Murder Inc. Maybe if I went to LA County, though, they would give me the dog. I don't know. I don't have any money, though. I'm broke. All that I can see, I steal. I fill up my garage. 'Cause in my mind, music from Jamaica isn't music at all. Oh, my love, and why have we not nuked them off the earth? It's you. You're the one who stole all the nukes. Oh shit, the nukes are fake. Right, Zap? See, what I'm telling you guys, this coffee mug is useless. This is a useless coffee mug. I might as well carry like a thimble of coffee back and forth. You know how much coffee it takes to get through this? What do you think about this? And then he puts nothing. I'm just fucking with you. Hold on. Yeah, here you go. Cheney is not DB Cooper. Okay, going to the grocery